Hello everyone, welcome to my basic guide to Ancestries video. This time I wanted to talk about one of my favorite systems in DC20, which is Ancestries. Now I've mentioned it in quite a few of my other videos, so you might be vaguely familiar, but because I wanted to dive deep into it, I wanted to make sure people could watch this video independent of anything else I've said. So let's start with the absolute basics of Ancestries. What are Ancestries? Well, Ancestries can mean of quite a few things. Broadly speaking, they represent both your biology and sort of your form, as well as your upbringing, including the idea of who your parents were or the culture that you were raised in. They oftentimes represent a mix of personality traits that your character might have due to those elements. And nicely and importantly, Ancestries are a customizable system where you can express who you are by using a variety of features and traits. So let's talk about some of that. The Ancestry Traits. Ancestry traits are the main mechanical backing of the Ancestry system. They give you some kind of benefit that you can use to represent your character, and oftentimes that's going to reflect the ancestry that you have. Each ancestry has a list of traits that are associated with it. Some of those ancestry traits might overlap for two different ancestries, so two ancestries might share the same trait. Nonetheless, each ancestry list is made to make it feel like that ancestry. So, how do the ancestry traits work? Well, that revolves around ancestry points. Ancestry points are the main way you interact with these ancestry traits. You use ancestry points to sort of purchase or get these ancestry traits. Each trait is going to cost some amount of points, and you can use those points to gain, or you can think about it as purchasing, those ancestry traits. You start with 5 ancestry traits by default, and you will gain more at higher levels 4 and 7. Currently, there is no explicit exact amount of points that you get at levels 4 and 7, but if you would like to run with a homebrew and play at levels 4 and 7, I would recommend using 2 ancestry points given at each of those levels. So by the end of level 7, you'll have the 5 ancestry traits that you start with, the 2 you would have gotten at level 4, and the 2 you would have gotten at level 7, for a total of 9 ancestry traits. There is a little bit of more complexity to this system, so let's dive a little bit deeper. Let's talk about the types of ancestry traits. First off are minor ancestry traits. These are traits that cost 0 ancestry points, and they give some kind of minor benefit that's going to help emphasize the theme and flavor of that ancestry. Now, because they cost 0 points, you can only have one minor ancestry trait at a time. So basically choose the one whose flavor best matches the personality of your character or the ancestry that you want to lean into the most. Then there are negative ancestry traits. These are traits that have some kind of drawback or penalty and therefore cost negative points. This means when you take them, you actually get back ancestry points that you can use to spend for more traits. And there is no limit on the amount of negative ancestry traits you can have, but they do have an impact on play, so you might want to be cautious taking too many negative traits. Then most of your regular traits are split up between 2 lists or categories, the default ancestry traits and the expanded ancestry traits. The default ancestry traits are a sort of pre-built list of traits that'll add up to 5 ancestry trait points. So if you want to just quickly run a character and not worry about building an ancestry trait or a whole ancestry, then you just take the default ancestry traits that are provided, and those will add up to the 5 points that you need. However, there is much more customization available in the system, and most players opt to take from the expanded ancestry traits. There's nothing special that has to be done. These are just sort of put into a special category to note that the default ancestry traits are the quick play, sort of start immediately option, and the expanded ancestry traits allow for you to go a little bit deeper. These traits also tend to have a cost to them, and oftentimes include more of these negative ancestry traits that are optional. So, importantly, some traits, and this is not represented here, are going to have prerequisites to be taken, needing you to have another trait. For example, some traits in the game have building up of how much flight you can do, starting with a gliding speed, building up to a limited flight, and then allowing you to take full proper flight. Each one of these requires the previous trait, so that you can't just immediately take the full flight trait. You're going to need to learn how to glide first, and then learn how to have a limited flight, before you can learn to truly fly. Next up, let's talk about your starting ancestries. When you build a character, you're going to pick 1 or 2 ancestries to reflect that character. And when you pick those ancestries, you gain access to their ancestry trait lists. and you can choose to split up those 5 trait points you get as you choose among those ancestries. Now, this is sort of the default way to play, but there is a variant rule which allows you to build custom ancestries. In this system, you can create a completely novel ancestry or take more mixing and more matching than just the first 2 ancestries or the default 2 ancestries you get access to. So in this case, you choose from 3 or more ancestries. Really, you get access to all of them. And instead of having the 5 points to start with, you only have 4. Since you are getting more power by accessing more traits, that power is sort of limited by giving you less points to spend. This is an excellent option for players who want to build an ancestry that isn't really represented in the book and want to create something outside the box. This is often very easy to accomplish by mixing different traits from different ancestries, and by doing so, creating a completely new feeling ancestry, despite using a lot of the traits that are used and provided in the book. Next up, let's talk about some of the default stats. See, when you pick your ancestries, there's the assumption that no matter what, your size will start out as medium, you'll have a speed of 5 spaces, and your creature type is humanoid. So when you build a character, you might see some ancestry traits that say that your speed is increased or your size is changed, and this is the base ancestry traits that you will work with. If a trait says that your speed is increased by 1, that means it goes from 5 spaces to 6 spaces. Next up, let's look at an example of an ancestry. Here I have human, which is oftentimes considered the most bland ancestry because, well, if you're listening to this video, you are probably a human. Now, we can see here a list of traits provided to human. There is a list of default traits, including their 0-cost trait, which is undying, and an expanded list, which provides additional options that can be used for further customization. In fact, they're included in that expanded list is the negative trait, which you can use to get more points, in this case allowing you to decrease an attribute of your choice, and giving you 1 more point back that you could spend on another trait, perhaps maybe the unbreakable provided below. Okay, so let's take a look a little bit at the ancestries themselves. This is the list of all the ancestries that are currently in the game. So going through some of them, humans are adaptable and resilient. They tend to be very good at surviving and interacting well with death's door. Elves are nimble and oftentimes in touch with plants. This is represented by them being able to move through terrain more easily and having a better knowledge of the natural environment around them. Dwarves are sturdy and in touch with the earth and stone. They are able to understand and analyze minerals better, and also generally able to withstand things like toxins and poisons more appropriately than other ancestries can. Halflings are kind of elusive and in touch with animals. They can be hard to keep engaged with, allowing them to disengage easily and moving through enemies, as well as being able to communicate a little bit at a very limited capacity with animals and being able to calm them more easily. Gnomes are witty and very mentally resilient, as well as being in touch with the weather, able to know what the weather is and even, in certain cases, being resistant to lightning. Orcs are energetic and one could say aggressive, but I don't quite want to pin them into that category, and they are quite perseverant. Similar to humans, they can do quite well on death's door and push through these kind of near-death experiences. Dragonborn are, as they sound, part dragon, coming with the similar associated benefits, things like a dragon's breath. But as well, dragon come with a natural protector element to them. Many of their traits are geared towards helping allies when they go down, or a negative trait that makes them suffer when allies go down. Giantborn are what they sound like. They are large and powerful, partially like a giant. This helps them throw enemies and objects. Angelborn are connected to holy and light sort of magic and beings. Now, this doesn't mean Angelborn are always good. In fact, Angelborn have the option to be connected to the Fiendborn. And the Fiendborn are connected to unholy and dark magic and beings, which also have an option to be quote-unquote redeemed and take traits from the Angelborn list. So Angelborn and Fiendborn are a sort of duo representing the alignment or spectrum of divine entities. Finally, there is Beastborn, which is probably the most unique out of all of these ancestries. Beastborn don't come with a default trait list, because Beastborn aren't really meant to represent one thing more than they're representing a creature that is part animal, a humanoid that is part animal specifically. And therefore, the traits available to beastborns are quite large, and the exact representation of a beastborn can vary greatly as it depends on which traits are chosen. You could have a beastborn that is representative of a spider, or a beastborn that is representative of a turtle, or one that is something entirely different. And all of these beastborn will act and behave and mechanically be quite different. Okay, let's mention some additional rules just to kind of wrap up these ideas. First off, when you're taking traits, you can't take the trait with the same name multiple times. So if a trait does appear on multiple Ancestries lists, you can't take that trait again unless it specifically says otherwise. On top of this, one of the very neat parts of the Ancestry system, in my opinion, is the repeated feature refunds. See, if you get a feature, let's say from your class, which is identical to or better than an ancestry trait that you already have, you get refunded the points of that ancestry trait, which you must basically immediately spend on some other ancestry. This allows for you to pick up an ancestry early on, even though you know you might want to pick up a feature later that's basically going to do a better version of it. This allows you to have that benefit for the earlier part of the game, and then when you get something that completely replaces it, that actually gives you a greater burst in power, as you can choose something else to do with those ancestry points. I think this is great for making players feel good about taking ancestry traits that do what their characters want them to do, even if they plan to do that same thing later on. Alright, that's everything I wanted to cover with Ancestries, and give a basic introduction to the system. Now, obviously, I didn't cover every single ancestry trait in the rules, and I would highly encourage you to look through the ancestries. See which ones sounded good by the concepts that I described earlier, and look through some of their traits and see if any of them catch your eyes. Look at some of the other ancestries. You'll be surprised sometimes at how much another ancestry might intrigue you, even if the concept itself doesn't sound quite as intriguing. Anyways, I hope you have fun looking at the ancestries and building your own ancestry. In fact, I would love to hear in the comments of any interesting and cool custom ancestries people have made using the ancestry system, or even some homebrew ancestries. This is a really great system for homebrewing because it provides a very clean layout for the amount of power that an ancestry trait should be worth and how to build an ancestry of your own. So please let me know in the comments on any cool ideas that you have, and until the next time, have the best time.